Let's work on our quiz review. This is factor completely and solve the equation. So we need to do two things. We need to give them factors and then solutions. So I'm going to see what I have in common. I've got a q cubed minus a q squared and then minus a 30q. So I know for a fact that I can take out at least one of these q's. I'll divide this by q. And when I do that, I can reduce the exponents here from a 3 to a 2, so q squared, from a 2 to a 1, so q, and then from this 1 to a 0. So all we have left is a minus 30. That'll equal 0. So let's take a look over here. We have q times q squared is q cubed. Q times negative q is negative q squared, and q times negative 30 is negative 30q. Now I can factor 30 into 1 and 30, 3 and 10, 6 and 5, and a bunch of other factors. When I think about which factor pair will add up to negative 1, so I see this negative q here, and I'm trying to get these factors of 30 to add up to negative 1, I see this 6 and 5 right here are my best choices. I see that I can use a negative 6 and a positive 5 to get me to negative 1. That's also good news for me here at this negative 30 because negative 6 and positive 5 will multiply to get me to negative 30. Negative times positive is a negative. So these are my two factor groupings. I have an x minus 6 and an x plus 5 that we just discovered. So we're going to rewrite this q again, q. And now, instead of using this quadratic, this q squared minus q minus 30, we're going to write it as its broken down form. X minus 6 times x plus 5. All of that will equal 0. And here your factors start to come out. You've got your solution number 1, q equals 0. That's this q, and it equals 0. We also have an x minus 6. Flip the sign, you get x equals positive 6. X plus 5, x equals negative 5. As an example, x plus 5, if we say that x plus 5 equals 0, we would subtract 5 from both sides, and we get that x equals negative 5. And that's this solution right here. You can do the same for practice on this factor x minus 6 to finish up. The next problem that we see is number 4. I've got an n cubed plus 2n squared minus 9n minus 18. I can't divide by any one factor here because this does not have an n, so it's not like I can take an n out here. And 9 and 18 are good, they're multiples. I like 2 and 18, that's good. But they definitely don't have anything in common because we just have a 1 here. So what I can use here when I don't have anything in common and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, I can use the grouping method. Grouping method means that I can select 2 of my terms and try to group them together into factors. So here I can divide by an n squared, and this would be n plus 2. Let's check and make sure that we haven't made any errors. N squared times n is n cubed. N squared times 2 is 2n squared. Now over here, I know that I can take out a negative 9. I could divide by negative 9. That's going to give me n, and then a positive 2. Let's make sure that we've done all of this correctly. I have an n plus 2, so negative 9 times n is negative 9n. Negative 9 times positive 2 is negative 18. I went ahead and took out a negative 9 because I wanted to get this repeat root. I can use a special procedure in the grouping strategy if I have a repeated root. I'm going to take my grouping coefficient here, and I will make a new grouping of n squared minus 9. Then I will just need to write my repeated root here of n plus 2. And you're going to use this strategy. It follows the same method every time. All of this equals 0. N plus 2 is already completely factored. There's really nothing I can do. N plus 2 equals 0. We know that that solution will be n equals negative 2. You can just subtract 2 from both sides, and that goes away. But this n squared minus 9, there's more to factor here, and we just need to figure out what it is. So on this side, we set n plus 2 equal to 0, and we're going to do the same thing with this factor. N squared minus 9 equals 0. Add 9 to both sides, and you're going to get n squared equals 9. If I take the square root of both sides, n squared equals 9, and I take the square roots of both sides, I have n times n is n squared, so the square root of n squared is just n. And then I have the square root of 9, and this is where it can get a little tricky, because the square root of 9 is plus n minus 3. In other words, 3 times 3 is positive 9, but also negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. So we need to have both solutions here. And you see all three solutions, n equals negative 2, n equals positive 3, n equals negative 3. To write these, though, in factor form, we need to say n plus 2 times n minus 3 times n plus 3 equals 0. And here are your factors. Let's work on number 7. Number 7 says find the zeros of the function, sketch a quick graph. So we need to find our zeros. To do that, we'll go through factors. First and foremost, I have x to the 4th plus x cubed plus x squared. The highest exponent that I can take out is this x squared. So if I divide by x squared, I'm going to get x squared plus x minus 12. Let's check and make sure we've done that correctly. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times negative 12 is negative 12x squared. Good. Let's see if we can factor this 12. This 12 can factor into 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 4 and 3. We're trying to get our factors to add up to a positive 1. I can't make it with 1 and 12. I can't make positive 1 with 2 and 6, but 4 and 3, I can say a positive 4 and a negative 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. 4 multiplied by negative 3 is negative 12. So these must be my groupings. I'll have an x plus 4 factor and an x minus 3 factor. You're going to keep this x squared here. X squared multiplied by x plus 4 multiplied by x minus 3 equals 0. So to make your roots, we're going to say that x squared equals 0. So x also equals 0, because 0 times 0 is 0. And then we also have an x plus 4. This means that it is x equals minus 4. X minus 3 is x equals positive 3. Again, here just flip the sign. If you see a negative 3, it will turn into an equal sign and a positive 3. Those are my 4 roots. Remember, here is going to be a bounce. This will be a cross and a cross. So when we sketch our graph of a quartic, it normally, right, it would look like a W, like that. But we know that we're going to have a cross at negative 4. We'll have a cross at positive 3. And then a bounce here at 0. So we'll go ahead and dot those in on our axis. I'm looking at the front and I'm seeing that this is a positive function, so there's no reflection. It should still hold its W shape. And we will go cross, bounce, and cross. Number 8. Says x to the 4th minus 8x squared plus 16. So